Hey everyone, Matt here from Docs Are Running, and today we're going to do a comparison review, or should I upgrade episode, with the Nike Pegasus 40 versus the new Nike Pegasus 41. I cannot believe the Nike Pegasus in its 41st iteration. It is the longest running, and pun totally intended, longest running shoe series of all time. 41 years is a long time to be going on, and there's been some changes, but it's also been some fairly consistent thing. This is the most stereotypical standard running shoe still on the market. If you put up a picture of a Pegasus, people are going to know, oh, you mean a running shoe. It's just kind of that well known. It has been for the longest time the most common standard neutral daily training out there. It's a great shoe for people that just want a simple, no frills, not crazy shoe. It's 10 millimeter drop as it's almost always been, with a decent amount of cushioning that can handle a little bit of up-tempo stuff, but definitely mileage and longer run. It could just a little bit of everything in the training realm. Version 40 was very much a Pegasus, although it was interesting because there was a little extra room up at the forefoot, but just very solid cushioning, and kind of refused thus far to increase the stack height, which is where 41 goes. Increased stack height, a lot of changes. So what I really want to help you figure out is, hey, should you go with the now discounted version 40, or should you go with the full price 41? So let's talk about specs first. And I need to give a caveat because what I'm going to share with you isn't exactly what I'm getting. So version 40, and I get all my stats from Running Warehouse, version 40 was supposedly coming in at about 10.3 ounces for men's size 9, women's size 10.5, or about 292 grams. The 41 is coming in supposedly at 10 ounces or 283 grams. My scale that I measured is getting something different. Version 40 is coming in at 10.2 ounces for my men's size 10. Version 41 is coming in at about 10.5 ounces for my men's size 10. And this does feel a teeny bit heavier. This one feels a little bit lighter, which would make sense because the stack heights are different. So version 40 was coming in at 33 on the heel, 23 on the forefoot for a 10 millimeter drop. Version 41 is coming in at 37 on the heel, 27 on the forefoot for a 10 millimeter drop. And we'll start with ride because that's where things really change. And yes, version 41 does feel like a much higher stack height shoe. While version 40 and the Pegasus in general kind of stayed fairly standard in the moderate stack height range, version 41 takes that up much higher. There's no super foam. There is an update to the foam. Version 40 was a React midsole. This is now React X midsole. So it is softer, and the majority of that softness happens in the heel. The heel does feel much longer. It's got a really nice, smooth heel bevel. So the heel transitions really good. It's actually more stable in the heel as well than version 40, but then it transitions into a little bit more firmer forefoot. So softer heel, firmer forefoot. That's very different from the Peg 40, which was actually very consistent. It was like a slightly firm, slightly soft, so very standard cushion shoe that felt really consistent no matter where you landed. There was a moderate amount of flexibility, and the same thing happens this shoe, a lot more than a lot of the stiff rides on the market today, but there was just a normal level of flexibility as you transition through the forefoot with a fairly normal heel. The version 41 now has a more rockered heel. It's a larger heel with a lot more sole flare, which again does make it more stable because there are significant sidewalls here that is noticeable upon impact. If you want a little more heel guidance, this shoe is going to do well. What it goes back to being consistent with is the midfoot is fairly narrow, as with most Pegasus. So if you need midfoot guidance stability, this is not going to be the shoe for you, and I could feel it almost immediately. Once you get to the forefoot, fairly standard. But what the 41 has over 40 is, again, the heel is wider with sidewalls. The forefoot is also wider. So you can tell as you transition through the forefoot, there's just a tiny bit more stable ride compared to version 40, which from heel to toe was very neutral. If you don't do well with sidewalls, you might want to approach 41 with caution. But if you do, you're going to do fine. Okay. If you don't do well with them, go with version 40. Now, in terms of ride, how they feel, version 40 felt really good with daily miles, doing some up-tempo stuff, did a lot of fartlegs, really enjoyed the shoe. I've got about 50 miles on my pair. I never got to 100 because other shoes had to be tested. Version 41, one of the first things I did was a workout in this shoe, and it just felt a teeny bit heavy. It feels like it feels better transitioning through the heel, and like it's just a little bit better at those training paces. You can do up-tempo stuff, but it feels better at long run and easy paces, whereas version 40 had a little bit more of that versatility. It still did fine in terms of doing a little bit of workout, and it's still that classic shoe like your high schooler or newer runner just getting into shoes and needing something for a little bit of everything. This is still going to do fine, but the 40 has a little bit more versatility into some up-tempo stuff. Now, it's more comfortable, though, if you're a heel striker and you want some more cushioning in the heel, because Nike React X is definitely softer in version 41. There's a lot of it, and the amount that you have here as you transition to the firmer forefoot, that contrast actually makes the heel drop feel a little higher. I didn't notice a 10 millimeter drop as much in version 40. I actually felt like this was more 8. If you like a higher heel drop and you want a large heel, version 41 is definitely going to be the right shoe for you. Almost what reminded me of the Mizuno Wave Rider. Not in that way, but it just felt like it had that much higher drop there, and also very similar in some ways to the Brooks Ghost, except there's a much smoother heel transition in the shoe. So better for training, team it of up-tempo capacity, but feels a much softer heel, higher heel drop for people that need that and just want that really heel based transition. Whereas I felt like version 40 it kind of felt good no matter where you landed. The drop didn't feel like it was getting in the way. You could land heel, land forefoot, didn't matter. Version 41 feels like it's a lot more biased toward the rear foot for people that want that thing. So hopefully that helps you make that decision there. In terms of upper fit, things have changed. Version 40 was interesting because it felt like there was a little bit more volume and a little bit more width in the forefoot. So people that need a little more room, you might really like this shoe. Version 41 still has a good amount of room for a Pegasus because this used to be way more narrow, but the volume is really low. I noticed that immediately. It's very low over the toes and the midfoot. I did not have to tighten the laces that much, and I have not had any slippage. So security is really good in both of them, but it sits really low on the foot. If you have a normal width, normal volume foot, this should be fine. If you want a little bit more room, but you want to lock down upper, this should be totally fine for you, and it gave me great security without getting in the way. There was a little bit more material here, so it feels slightly more plush throughout the length of the upper, whereas, again, version 40 feels more like a fairly standard, fairly normal amount of cushioning throughout with just a little bit more room. So if you found like version 40 had a little bit too much room, version 41 is going to be a little bit better for you. But if you want a little more room, I would go probably check out the 40. And again, just to emphasize durability, both of them seem to be doing absolutely fine. I have 50 miles on this pair on the version 40, and I have 20 miles on version 41. And I am noticing a little bit faster lug wear here after 20 miles compared to version 40. So it appears to be wearing just a teeny bit quicker. But overall, again, no major wear in the sole, doing absolutely fine. I do like trails just a teeny bit more in version 40 because I feel like there's a little bit better coverage on the midfoot. But if you're not using it for that, which there's a Pegasus trail out there, which I haven't tried, but that's probably a better option. If that doesn't bother you, version 41 is going to be absolutely fine. So still definitely a Pegasus, but it's changed in a couple ways. Little lower volume, little bit more width in the forefoot, a little bit more stable in the heel, very neutral throughout the ride of the shoe. Still not a ton of midfoot guidance if you need that, so look elsewhere. Forefoot, a little bit more stable, a little bit better guided, fairly normal flexibility between the two of them, and very good for daily runs, long runs, and a little bit of up-tempo stuff, although 40 beats a little bit with the up-tempo stuff, and 41 beats the other one a little bit with being a little more versatile into the longer efforts if you want a little more cushion and a little bit softer ride. Personally, thus far, I'm even though it's a little bit less stable for me, I'm liking the Pegasus 40 more because I personally like a little bit more of a lighter shoe, a little bit more ability to go up tempo stuff, a little bit more of that lightweight trainer feel, which is not quite there, but it's still a little bit closer. Whereas people who just go, hey, I want a shoe, I'm a good heel striker, I just want cushioning, I want to be able to roll through and not think about the ride too much, you might want to consider version 41. But both of them are still really good shoes, really good updates. The 41 is an interesting update that goes in a different direction. And another option, if you want even more cushioning, is the Vomero, which I'll do a comparison. But both are still good shoes. Which one's going to work better for you? That's up to you to be able to figure out. So I want to know below, have you tried both these? Do you agree with my sentiments or do you disagree? I want to know what you think about the updates to each one and which one you prefer. As always, we appreciate you listening and watching and hope this stuff helps.